Hello friends, welcome back. Hope you're well. I'm in Luminar Neo, and in this video, I'll be diving into the best overall color tool in Luminar, which is known as Color Harmony. One of the reasons I consider it the best is because it's not really a tool, it's 4 tools. We're going to use all 4 of them, show you how they work. You'll walk away with a much better understanding of this incredibly powerful color tool. Let's go ahead and get into it. I've got this photo here, which I've already cropped and straightened and made some light adjustments. I started in Develop Raw. It looked like that. It now looks like that. It's brighter, right? Put on the highlights, lifted the shadows, lifted the exposure, a little bit of contrast, no temperature or tint adjustments. Next, I went into Super Contrast, before and after. Again, just a further refinement to the light, and that is kind of my 1-2 punch for editing. So before and after, that's my current state. I'm now going to get into Color Harmony, and we're going to dive into the power and the awesomeness of this incredible color tool. Now, of course, this is already a bit of a dramatic, beautiful shot. I'm a little bit biased, of course, but it's shot at a glacial lagoon in Iceland on one of the Luminar trips there. So I've already got some great color to work with, and the beauty and the power of Color Harmony is that you have 4 different color tools that you can use to enhance or creatively apply colors to your image. We'll start at the top. This is simple and straightforward. Brilliance is impacting the overall color, every color. It's kind of like a combination of saturation and vibrance. When I drag it to the right, and no, do not go this far in editing because that is way overdone, but it's a good visual example of what it's doing. Every single color is getting more brilliant, it's more saturated, it's more vibrant. So that's a really powerful slider. Just don't use it that much. I usually use it fairly gently. So here I am at 20, and that looks pretty nice, right? So double click anytime to reset something back to 0. The warmth slider is a temperature control, just like in Develop or Develop Raw. If you go left, everything gets cooler. If you go right, everything gets warmer. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So for this one, if I was using Brilliance and Warmth, maybe I go 20, 25 or something like that, and maybe do a slight bit of cooling adjustment or maybe a little bit of warming adjustment. Either way, you get a pretty nice overall color look before and after. Gentle, simple, straightforward, but powerful, and that's Brilliance and Warmth. Now the second tool is Color Contrast, and this one, honestly, don't sleep on this tool. It's incredibly powerful, and I will admit, I don't talk about it a lot in videos, but it can come in really helpful. Let me show you how it works. The amount slider, of course, is just the amount. The hue slider is where the power comes in. So if it's asleep, so to speak, grayed out like that, just grab the amount slider and start to move it. And as soon as you start to move it, the hue slider kind of activates and then you can adjust it. The reason you need that is because this hue slider controls what color contrast is actually doing. So color contrast is applying contrast to whichever color you've selected in the hue. So if you look at the hue slider, it starts with the red, goes all the way kind of back to red. So in a photo like this, the warmer colors are kind of over here, right? And that's a little bit of stuff in the highlights, the clouds and the reflections. And then there's a lot of cooler stuff, and I'm going to show you both examples. So what color contrast does is whichever color you select, let's say I start with these reds, kind of yellows, and then apply the amount. The amount is how much contrast you want applied to that color. So the color you've selected with hue is going to get lighter, right? It's going to kind of brighten that color. And the color that's essentially opposite that color on the color wheel, then that color is going to get darker. So I've picked kind of the reddish, some of these brighter tones. So now when I drag the amount, you'll see that they're getting lighter. Those are the kind of those brighter colors in the sky. And what's happening is kind of the darker stuff, the blue stuff is getting more dark, right? And so that's what color contrast is doing. I'm going to go back to 0, and what I want to do now is change the hue to the blue. So I'm usually in the 220s, 230 or so to get kind of into the blue. And so opposite of blue is yellow, effectively. You can know that by looking down here in color balance, which we're going to get to in a couple of minutes. But what happens now is, let's say I want to lighten some of these icebergs here. Well, then I can do that by dragging the amount. Remember, I've selected the blue, and as I drag the amount, I'm kind of lightening that. And so that's helping me kind of bring those to life. And so it will darken and crisp up some of these other colors that are opposite it on the color wheel. So it's not a tool that I use a significant amount or significantly often, but it can give you a lot of control. And in this case, as you can see, it's giving me the ability to really brighten those blues and have a nice impact on the photo. So that's pretty cool overall and a great little tool to be useful in your editing. Now, split color warmth, this one I adore. I use it all the time. And there's two sliders here. It's effectively isolating the warm colors and the cool colors so you can impact them separately. So it's not a saturation or vibrance. It's not a brilliance or warmth in that regard. What it does is, for warm slider, if you take that and drag that to the right, the warm colors get amplified. They get saturated and a bit more intense. But nothing is happening to the cool colors, right? So this is not a temperature slider. This is an impact to the warm colors only. And again, like any slider, if you go too far, it starts to look bad. But you might want to drag that 15 or 20 and you amp up a little bit of that warmth. However, if you drag it to the left, it doesn't again, it's not a temperature change. What it's doing is it's going to neutralize. It's essentially taking the saturation away from those warm colors, but only the warm colors. You can see it's getting this weird kind of grayed out kind of purple look because I'm taking the saturation away from it. So I rarely go to the left with warmth, and I pretty often go to the right with the warmth. So I'm just amping up those warm colors. But again, this slider is warm colors only. So that leads us to cool colors, which is this one here. Now it's the opposite. And that is, if you take the cool slider and drag it to the left, the cool colors are getting cooler, but nothing's happening to the warm colors. Again, don't go too far, but I'm cooling off the cool. And if I go to the right, I'm going to neutralize, kind of like remove the cool saturation kind of feel from those cool colors, but that's all I'm impacting. So again, I rarely go to the right with cool. With cool, I'm pretty much always going left. And often what I'll do is play up the color tension or the color contrast between the warm and cool colors by dragging the warm to the right and the cool to the left. So there you go. So before and after has a nice little impact on the photo. And that brings us to color balance. This is the granddaddy, the master of them all. I absolutely love it. And I'm going to start with highlights. And that's what's so great about color balance is you've got three different tonal areas, the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. And so that gives you the ability to come in and apply a specific color look to that tonal area. So in a photo like this, and frankly in most photos, I'm pretty much always playing with the highlights and often with the shadows. Sometimes I'll do midtones, but not always. So for this one, I want to amp up the highlights. The cool thing here is you've got the color wheel represented effectively. And so cyan and red, magenta, green, yellow, and blue, these are the colors, the primary colors that sit on the color wheel and sit opposite of each other. These are color opposites on the wheel. Yellow and blue are opposites, magenta and green are opposite, cyan and red are opposite. And so a photo like this has already got a lot of blue. In the highlights, I want to amp up the warm color. So for me, that is dragging the cyan red toward the red. So I'm getting more of that warm, nice look. And that looks really nice in the highlights only, right? The other one I really like for highlights is magenta. And that's because on these twilight kind of photos, I like that magenta look. And I will often take a little bit of magenta and a little bit of red together. And you can see what's happening. I've done nothing else because I've reset all these other edits. But if you look at the before, very blue, very cool overall. And now quite a bit warmer, a bit of pink. It looks really nice, I think. So that's why I often do highlights. And then midtones gives you the same thing. And shadows, for me, I tend to darken the shadows and cool them off. So that's usually just dragging the blue a little bit to the right to create a little bit more depth and contrast in those, in those shadow tones, right? So I'm kind of darkening and cooling them off. And I'll complement that with a warmth adjustment to the highlights. So that would literally, for me, usually be a little bit of cyan and red, a little bit towards the red on the cyan and a little bit towards the magenta in the highlights. And then in the shadows, as you saw, that's a little bit of blue. And you can see what I've done there is just a little bit of a color difference in the photo before and after. Pretty minor move overall, but it has a huge impact on the photo. Now the power and the strength of all these tools together is pretty significant. So what I recommend is if you're going to use all of them, just do a little bit. So I might come in, do a tiny bit of brilliance, maybe skip the warmth, maybe do a tiny bit of color contrast here in the blues, just to create a little bit of brightening in that blue. Maybe I'll add a little bit of warmth here and cool this off a tiny bit. And then in the highlights, maybe I'll come in and add a little bit of warmth and a little bit of magenta. And you can see the nice overall color look that I'm getting. And then if I go into the shadows here and add a little bit of blue, just keep in mind that's slightly the opposite of what I did here in color contrast. But I did a minor move there, pretty minor move here, and a couple of minor moves in split color warmth and in the top brilliance and warmth section. And you can see overall before and after, you get a really rich, colorful look overall. But just be careful because it's essentially 4 different color tools. So if you use them all in the same image, that's really stacking a lot of color edits on top of each other, which can have a huge impact. But overall, I would say with the light adjustments I did in Develop Raw and Super Contrast, and then coming into Color Harmony and making minor edits in all 4 sections, massive, massive difference in the overall look of the colors and in the photo. Just Color Harmony alone before and after, massive, massive color difference. That's the power and the control that you get using these tools in Color Harmony, and why I call it the most powerful and frankly the best color tool in Luminar, because it gives you so much you can do to your images to really bring them to life, to brighten them, to impact the colors, and just to have a huge overall difference in the look to the photo. That's Color Harmony. I hope this this video has given you some ideas about how to use it. Leave comments down below. Don't forget to sub to my newsletter at the link below and get a free 27-page guide to editing in Luminar Neo. Thanks for watching, my friends. I'll be back soon. You guys take care, and until next time, adios.